All right, everybody. Welcome to another thrilling installment in the Kubernetes community meeting. I am Jason Singer-Dumars, and I will be hosting today. And I am one of the co-leads of SIG ClusterOps. So I guess SIG ClusterOps is taking a turn at the wheel here. So, and I'm quite excited to actually see a demo today from my cohort, Rob Hirschfeld, who's got a demo of Kargo. Rob, are you here? I am hoping so. Okay.
I see cluster ops who is not you, unless you're twice logged in. So
Rob, paging Rob. Okay, well, so no Rob, so we will move on and come back to that, but let's have a release update. Let's start with the 1.6 release. Oh, wait.
Yeah, I'm here. Zoom is crashing on the desktop I was setting up for the demo, so.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, classic stuff.
Do you need some time, or do you want to go ahead and run through it now?
I can get it going really quickly if people are ready.
Okay. And so I believe we have a 10-minute time box, so we'll try and do that as much as we can.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
Let me, do I have the meeting control? Oops, that's not the paste I wanted.
if you push the share screen green button at the bottom, you should be able to share a screen.
All right. Let me get to a screen that I can actually share. Oh, I know what I'm doing wrong. Yay, nothing like last minute demo crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That's what
everybody.
makes it real.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. I was trying to get my dog to walk through the screen so I could do the CNN type excitement, but no such luck for that. All right. Well, thank you for your patience. I apologize for the craziness, and I have a huge demo lined up. So what we're going to do, I'm going to talk about what the demo is going to be, and then we'll try and go through it. Because it's like 6 Kubernetes deployments in parallel. I don't like to do anything halfway. And what we're doing, so Racken really believes in this community best practice approach to open source projects and deployments. And we really want to see a reduction in installer sprawl, but even more, we want to see the operators of Kubernetes working together and collaborating and feeding their changes back upstream. And what we've been doing is we maintain a project called Digital Rebar, which is an underlay, and it abstracts all the infrastructure, cloud and physical, and then it will run standard things like Ansible to then do deployments. And so for these demos, what I'm going to show you is we're just using community playbooks, which is Ansible, Kargo, to do this Kubernetes deployments in a completely off-the-shelf way. That way, as we find things, we can feed improvements back to Kargo. As Kargo improves, we can come back. So it's a really nice layer differentiation. Digital Rebar solves this infrastructure problem. So it's a different problem space. It does it by creating modularity within the infrastructure. So we break things up into small units, and then we reuse the units that we can reuse, like Kargo. And then we keep the units that are different, like physical infrastructure, different. So you get a lot of reuse out of the approach. And then for the demo, what I'm doing is I'm going to show a deployment against Amazon where I can show an upgrade. I'm going to build a classroom for 2 students. Then I have an OpenStack deployment that is based on Kubernetes, and then Helm. This is stuff that is out of the AT&T, SAP group, some of the stuff that's moving into the community. And depending on how we do time-wise, I've got, I actually have a 48-node infrastructure out of the infrastructure Mason group that I can kick off a deployment on. So, and since I'm time-boxed, I will start doing these deployments right away. If I can find my mouse. So to do that, let me bring up the environment I've got. So this is a running rebar installation. It's already got several deployments in it. So it has this Amazon deployment. I'm going to recreate this Amazon deployment using the wizard. So here's Kubernetes. If I just walk through this deployment, what you'll see it do is it's going to basically just guide me through building something. I could set the version back a little bit. If I wanted to deploy an older version, I can do things like turn on secondary integrations like Helm and Deis. So even though Kargo doesn't include it yet, we do it as a secondary step. The same is true with like Prometheus. So we have a monitoring. You can click on monitoring and add things into the infrastructure. And there's no magic. It's just building a JSON file that describes the infrastructure, the nodes, and things like that. So that's going to go ahead and work. I shouldn't have named it Amazon because that was already named. And so that is going to create a deployment like this. And I will show you what that looks like in a second. But what I will do is I'll switch over and do the Kubernetes deployment. All right. Zoom woke up on my other machine. Let's see. All right. So what a classroom deployment would look like for us is much more of a command line experience, because that's one of those places where what you really want to do is just go ahead and say, I'm going to take an existing infrastructure, so I already have a rebar capability created. I'm going to run that, and I want to go through an API-driven infrastructure like I just showed you, but in this case, I want to build a cloud provider, I want to create tenants so students can't see each other, and then I'm going to run those same deployment templates. And so in this case, it will go ahead and start that work going. We'll see that in the background. From the deployments as we build them. What gets super interesting is when you then look at that same view, but from the student's view. So this is, let's see, I have to log in as another user. In this case, this is student one. Student one is getting the deployment, and you'll see they have a cluster, a Kubernetes cluster being built for them dynamically on the fly. It's just they can see. If I jump back over to the primary view, which is here, what you'll see in that view is that I actually can see all of the clusters. So this would be like an instructor's view. And one of the things that we really feel like is important here, one is that we're trying to make it super easy to consume the community Ansible playbooks and target different infrastructures in a very homogeneous way. So we're not worrying about the differences between physical and cloud. But then you can also do a lot of parallel deployments. So if you were trying to test software-defined networking, in those cases, you could actually run the deployments with different configuration options, and you could test Weave and Calico and Flannel. You could then bring in different operating systems and mix and match, right? The goal is not to restrict, it's to really help the community find ways to bring all of those useful variations into a standard practice. So, right, really work towards best practices so that we can reuse code and share things. Wow, all right, I'm almost out of time on that. And then the physical deployment is gonna look exactly the same. This is the physical cluster with a whole bunch of nodes in it. And I could walk through that deployment. So that's that, a deployment there. Oof, I had everything so nicely laid out on my other desktop too. A physical deployment laid out there would basically pull in a whole bunch of these nodes. These are just sitting in an idle state. And I would pull those nodes into a deployment. I'd provision an operating system for them. And then I would be able to go through a full cycle. When I was done with those systems, I'd actually take them out of a deployment, and then it would reset the nodes back into a new deployment. So very cloud-like behavior, even out of physical infrastructure. And we think this is really important because what we want operators to be able to do is take bits as fresh as they can get it or off of their preferred fork, and then experiment operationally with improvements, changes, being able to do things like build an OpenStack cluster on top of all this infrastructure. And then once that happens, work on it in a community way so they can share improvements back up. If you're building like the OpenStack uses Helm to build a Ceph cluster, which is super cool, but not just an OpenStack thing. So we can take pieces of that and move it back into Kargo or into other Helm chart community places. Our goal with all this is to create an environment where people can interact, and we're looking for people who want to sort of work with us to build the whole stack. We're not creating a distro. This is really something where, you know, Racken can provide support for it, but it's not a SaaS. It's a software platform, you know, where you can actually own and control all the pieces, and then stay in upstream communities at the same time.
Okay, Rob, I'm putting a link in the document. So if you want to go into the transcript and actually put your contact info there so people can contact you to pitch in, because this is an amazing thing you're doing, and I think that it definitely needs more visibility, more interest. So
thank you. And we have a ton of videos that are much slower paced than 6 simultaneous deployments.
Okay, I'll put a link in there too for the YouTube channel.
I'll make sure the references are right. Thank you, Jason.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for that great demo. Are there any questions from the community for Rob before we move on to the next thing? And I just want to add or acknowledge how cool it is that you're spinning up OpenStack and this stuff. Like, rewind 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and this stuff, you'd be like, that's like flying cars and stuff.
We are very bullish on the. I was incredibly skeptical about OpenStack on top of Kubernetes just 6 months ago, and the progress that has been made in the community with the Helm charts has been really, really, really strong. You know, there's still a long ways to go, and we're getting to the hard parts.
Yeah.
But my expectation is that this will be the way to install OpenStack inside a year.
Excellent. All right, Dan Gillespie, you're up with updates for 1.6, which I wish did not have a big bold, not ready to release by them right now.
I do too, yeah.
Oh, man.
So we're burning down to our March 22nd release date. Currently, as Jason said, we are not ready to release. There's still, when I wrote this earlier, there were 7 bugs in the milestone, still 8 flakes in the milestone. And we're having some issues with upgrade testing completing. It looks like there's some issue with testing timeouts. So that's basically anything that's in the milestone is preventing us from blocking. Some people have put non-release blocking, but those will still block the release once everything else has been burned down. So if everyone just keeps focusing on that query there for the 1.6 milestone and just trying to get everything out of it, that's our indication of the release. While there's still things in that query, there are still things blocking the release. So if everyone wants to just dedicate their attention to that, that will really help move the release on schedule. The next item here for action required is there's a hard deadline for documentation PRs on Friday. So everything needs to get in if we want to make it onto the website in time for release. So please get your docs PRs in. And we've posted human curated release notes. So please look over those. This has been generated, we posted the machine generated release notes, but some of them really need some human eye. So if everyone can look over them and make sure that things are human readable. We'll put a release candidate out when the milestone is empty, and we'll continue putting them out as bugs come out up until the release date. And we'll keep code freeze in effect until that first RC is released. Is there any questions around those?
So I have one question, and that's if you're seeking some help on some of this stuff, what is the one thing that you could use help the most on? And is there anybody willing in the community now to volunteer to help you with that?
Really just going down the list. There's bugs here that just need people to look over them. I think most of the things are being worked on, okay. But really just if you get pinged on an issue, just being responsive is the biggest thing. So we're going to keep burning down on these issues, but if things come up and we discover that this issue is not in this certain area that we think it is, and it's somewhere else, just being responsive so we can act quickly. That's the biggest thing I asked in general. And just keep an eye on this issue list, and if there's things that you can help on, please chip in.
Okay, and don't be afraid to hit the developer list if you need. I mean, whatever we need to do to marshal resources around this, let's do it, because we don't want the release to slip. And
definitely, yeah, we'll do.
Great. And moving on to 1.5 release. Martin, you available?
I think he generally isn't able to join us,
Okay.
but he did his note.
So there is a note that says 1.5.5 planned for next week. I guess that's probably it. 1.4 release update from Jess, and I saw you on earlier, Jess, if you're around.
Yeah.
Great.
So we had like a few, probably like a handful of patches merged. So we might as well just do a release tomorrow with those. And so if you have any more, you can ping me on them today. That will happen tomorrow, and that's it.
Great, thanks. Okay, let's move on to SIG updates, unless there's any questions out there regarding the current release cadence. Okay, Dan, you're up for SIG UI.
Hey guys. Dashboard had its 1.6.0 release today, so that's out there. There are detailed release notes on the repo. I can, I think, share here just to show two of the more recent features that made it in. Does that show up?
Yeah, we got it.
Awesome. So if I'm understanding correctly, 1.6 for Kubernetes is largely kind of a stabilization release, and that's the same approach that the dashboard team took with our 1.6. Two new features that are facing to users are we've added storage classes. So those were introduced in 1.4, and now you can see those in dashboard. And also third-party resources. They now have their own navigation item. If I scroll down to that, you can see the third-party resources and any objects that you've created using those third-party resources. Then the other big thing was migrating to Client Go from a Kubernetes internal client resource. So those are our release notes there if you'd like to check those out. Some other new stuff for dashboard. We now have a design guide for anyone interested in contributing toward design. Has emojis, so I thought they'd be more friendly for designers. We are working on our 2017 plan. We've got Dan Pike helping out with that effort. Excited to pull together some roadmap details there. And then finally, one new feature that I wanted to mention that's on the horizon is the exec into a pod functionality, which we're working on, and that will be hopefully coming soon. That's it for me. Any questions?
Great, thank you so much. That's super exciting stuff you've got going there. So
Cool.
can't wait to see the exec feature.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael from SIG Windows, you're up next.
I didn't get a confirmation from him, so he may not have joined us this morning.
All right.
Hey, Sarah, I'm right here.
Oh, you are. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, hi, guys. So it's a quick update from us. We took the opportunity of the stabilization release for 1.6 to kind of work on other things. So we did a complete rewrite of the networking back for SIG Windows. And now one of the capabilities that we demoed at the Google Next conference last week was the ability to use OVN and OVS as the networking overlay for Windows nodes. So that gives us a single networking namespace that could be both across Windows and Linux for containers and pods. We're not completely done with that work. This was just an alpha preview that we showed at Google Next. We still have things like implementing NAT, getting DNS to work properly, and a few other things. But it was a great sign of progress that we were able to get network connectivity inside containers right now. So all in all the demos that we've done in the past, we're able to do them again now with much more improved network connectivity, including internet access. And we don't even need the kubeproxy anymore. We use the OVN OVS layer as well as the gateway to basically control the traffic. We do plan to go in front of Secret Network very soon and present our entire architecture. And then as Microsoft is working on native overlay drivers for containers, we'll be able to snap onto them and utilize them under OVN as well. So that's the update from us. So overall, in 1.6, we don't have anything new. We're still in alpha, and we're marching towards a beta for 1.7 in the next quarter.
Great. Thank you so much for the update. SIG CLI, Philip, you're up next, and Fabiano.
Hey guys. All right, I'll just give a quick update on some of the stuff we've been working on and some of the stuff we have planned for next quarter. Go. Moving it so the screen's on the same as my camera. All right. So this quarter, we spent a lot of focus on stabilizing the kube control apply feature. I want to give a special shout out to Jordan and Mengchi for a lot of work they did there. But we got a kube control edit now works properly with apply. Third-party resources have they're not perfect and not totally feature complete, but they work a lot better instead of being totally unsupported. We have support for explicitly deleting values in apply. We have merging primitive lists now works, and we added some nice porcelain commands that allow you to actually view and set the annotation that tells you the last config that was applied. So in the past, the documents would say, if you want to see the last configuration that was applied, go look at this annotation on the object, which is this single line of JSON that's not formatted for human eyes. So we got some nice porcelain commands there. And we're going to update the docs in 1.6 to use those commands when explaining how kube control apply works. For 1.7, what we're looking at is really rounding out and trying to finish as much as we can with the kube control apply open issues. We're aware of a number of open issues, specifically the strategic merge patch keys are not correct on all objects. Union type objects aren't handled properly. And they are in many cases, but there's some things you do that will fail. And looking at trying to get kube control apply prune a little more mature, finishing some of the finishing some of the porcelain commands, and not round tripping objects in kube control are things we're looking at.
Great. Okay, any questions?
Anything else from Philip? Otherwise, I would also like to add a couple of things for the CLI.
Okay.
Nope, nothing for me. Thanks, Fabiano.
Okay, sure. So I also wanted to mention the work CLI has been doing around the service catalog, the incubator project under Kubernetes. So we've been working on a bit around making sure that kubectl can play well with service catalog API, which it doesn't today. So it needs a lot of stabilization, moving things server side, and also trying to make sure things are discoverable on the client instead of hard-coded like they are on kubectl today. So we've been doing that, and we are also going to propose, this is a work in progress, it's going to have a written proposal very soon, a new set of commands for interacting with the service catalog service, especially for end users like service customers, so that they can request services and bind them to their applications easily and in a user-friendly way, really, instead of having to handle binding or service instances, JSON and YAML files. Other than that, like Philip mentioned, this past release has been for us a lot about stabilization. So we worked a lot on bugs, fixing bugs, and review stuff from contributors. We also finished a new document for onboarding new contributors that are interested to contribute, especially for kubectl. So the outcome was really nice. So I think we're going to advertise that on the public mailing lists very soon, and along with a call for contributors, anyone that wants to contribute to kubectl, we now have this document that links to some issues where help is wanted and things like that. But that's it, service catalog, and a lot of stabilization also happening these days. But that's it for SIG-CLI.
So quick question on that. So you mentioned that you're adding commands for the service catalog to SIG-CLI. Now the service catalog is broken out as an extension to the core components. Why aren't we doing the same thing on the command line tools? And I think this is probably a longer discussion, but we need to have a scalable way where we don't start building everything into big one kitchen sink here in terms of the command line tool set.
Yeah,
we've talked about this before, right? I think that having some like Git model where it's sort of you can have a binary, drop a binary. Yeah, there's this whole extension proposal, and probably this is a good forcing function maybe for driving that forward.
I totally agree. I think it's a great way. I mean, like the service catalog has blazed a lot of trails along this, and I think there's no reason not to blaze that trail at the client side too.
So Brendan,
just hear you say that you want the service catalog people to continue to suffer through the slings and errors of this.
I think that we should think very carefully before we integrate extra commands into kubectl.
I would agree.
I agree as well.
I'm also happy to volunteer some coding.
I think everybody should sort of like roll up their sleeves and help build the extension points. I mean, this isn't on the service catalog folks to actually both like blaze the trail and then use it, right? We can all help sort of like blaze that trail, but I think we should do that. And somewhat related is getting kubectl out of the main repo, which is a whole nother ball of wax. But we need to start breaking this stuff apart.
Silence. Yeah, those are actually two things Jeff, a new member of my team, and I were talking about with trying to look at in 1.7. But both of those actually came up, trying to split out kubectl from the main repo and the extension points.
Yeah, so there are definitely multiple things underway. I mean, nothing that has been said the SIG-CLI actually disagrees with. We just need more people working on it. Like literally 3 people show up to SIG-CLI, right? So there's been ongoing work for several quarters already to move more functionality from the client to the server. So Clayton has an open PR, I think, moving get and describe functionality, for example, to the server. So once we have that, then the API aggregation mechanism that Service Catalog is using would work for that additional resource by resource sort of functionality in kubectl. And then for special commands, the extension proposal is the thing intended for that. And I believe there's even a prototype, right? So I mean, we just need more people helping.
I think it's a larger discussion, but I think it's also a bad idea to blindly move stuff from client to server.
I am so in agreement with that.
And if we do move it to the server, we should put it as separable components that are alpha, that are essentially helper and out of core, right? I know it's been going on for a while, but the 3-way merge that's built into apply, I think is very complicated from the typical user's point of view. It's a longer discussion, but moving more and more of this stuff blindly to the server, I think is something that we should think about largely across.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue with the term blindly, but things like cascading deletion, where you can't even delete resources properly without extending the client to support new resources, is not really a long-term viable position. So, and we can talk about which specific things should stay in the client, which specific things should go in the server, but things that we need for every single resource
having it in the client is a problem.
So regardless, though, I just want to say that, I think I know that I'm going to point to Alex over here, was at SIG CLI last time. I want to start getting involved there. So you said that there were only 3 people there. I think we need to change that for sure. So I just want to give support for the folks who've been, making this stuff happen, regardless of lack of sort of wider attention. So I don't want to be down on anybody. I just want to sort of help figure out where we want to go moving forward.
Yeah, so this raises a couple issues. One is that there's a growing discussion or desire to really talk about what does it mean to have something in core versus not, and the architectural ramifications of one way or the other. I believe that we're probably getting to a point in the evolution of the project where we need to have a real concerted architectural discussion around the merits of one approach versus the other and come up with a strategy. Because the thing that we don't want to see is SIGs putting in good hard work on a feature or an inclusion in their components and basically have it get obviated by some higher level architectural concern. Because that's very disempowering from a project standpoint if you have people working hard on something that is never going to see daylight. So I think that that's something as a community we should probably look into sooner than later just to have that discussion. I know Brendan's very passionate about this, so there may be some leadership there, and there's also the proposals that are getting linked in the chat. So,
and I think we can do a better job of, as these things come up, driving them through the feature process and using that as an opportunity to get early feedback into this. I'd love to see us have, some sort of regular feature review meeting where everybody can get involved and become aware and learn about this stuff and give early feedback. I feel like there's a sort of architectural review component that is often missing for these things.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice segue to the fact that I was going to announce later, but we're scheduling a governance meeting, a special discussion for governance on Monday. And Brian has created a Google group to go along with that. So if you join that, you'll get the calendar invite.
Oh, there's a Google group. Did I miss that?
Yeah, I'm going to put everybody, I was going to send
okay.
Yeah, actually, Sarah.
Yay, more groups.
Sarah created the group. I'm not sure that people can actually join it when I looked at it. So if it's not possible to join, we need to.
I think I joined it, but I'm not positive. I clicked on the little joiny button anyway.
Okay.
All right. So we have a to do then to get that governance meeting and membership sorted out, and I guess that's
and I think that the broader point that I think is, I think that the tension here that we're all feeling is this notion of like, when are SIG API decisions sort of cross project decisions? And I think there are these places where we've done a bad job where SIGs have bubbled things, and then all of a sudden people who are not necessarily paying close attention to that SIG find out about it, and there is this secondary reaction, and I think that leads to frustration on both sides, and I think that's the biggest tension we need to figure out with the governance stuff.
Yeah, and I totally agree that it's demotivating for folks to have somebody swoop in and say, whoa, wait a second. So like, as much as we can sort of like, have clear guidelines and ways to catch that stuff earlier rather than later, I think the happier everybody's going to be.
Yeah, and I think that, people point out there's proposals and things like that, but I think honestly, like, we've reached a level of volume with proposals even that is hard to track and follow. So we need some better mechanism.
Yeah.
Brendan, you did successfully join the SIG-governance Google group. Or sorry, I'm not Kubernetes-governance Google group. And so it appears to be open. I will go double check all the permissions on it. So it is also publicly viewable, but it's going to be where we send the invite.
Great, thank you so much for that. Do we, oh great, there's a link in the chat. I'll put that in the transcript. And if you are interested in being part of the governance discussion, this is your opportunity, and I will reiterate that if you don't have an opinion spoken in these meetings, then that's the same as not having one. So definitely, if you feel passionate about these things, be present, show up, and definitely let's get a really good discussion going on some of these things. So moving along in the agenda, we have a quick update from SIG Cluster Ops, which I can just do, is we are going to do our first ever Kubernetes Operator Summit, and we're going to be doing it as part of GlueCon, since that was the first available date and we had the ability to use the facilities there. So Rob and I are going to be hosting that, and we're going to be doing our regularly scheduled SIG Cluster Ops meeting at that time, and we'll be transmitting via Zoom as per normal, and we would love to have anybody that's coming to GlueCon be a part of that. And if you've never been in one of our SIG cluster ops meetings, which you're missing out, because I'll tell you, they're the best. We have the best, the very best. So yeah, come to our meeting, and you'll definitely get to see some in-person discussions. And really, our goal is to try and enthuse and invigorate the operator community, so we can get more feedback and information from real-world cluster operators and integrate it into all the rest of the great work that SIGs are doing. So, and last up, it looks like we are at the notices section. So I will give the floor to Sarah. Is that you, the Kubernetes Day thing?
Let me find which Kubernetes Day thing. OpenSig at OpenStack. Actually,
Yeah.
if Bor's around, he might have more information on that.
I have more information regarding that. So, OpenStack Day call for papers is closing soon on Monday 20. So, if anybody is still interested in submitting your proposals and speaking there, so please submit your proposals during next 4 days during the weekend. We actually have the good volume of the submitted proposals. At the same time, we'd like to have more of them, just to have more diversity in the proposal talk and to select the best of them to be presented at the OpenStack Summit, at the Kubernetes Day at OpenStack Summit.
We also have upcoming CNC or Cloud Native Compute Foundation, Linux Foundation events, the Open Source Summit in Tokyo, ContainerCon, LinuxCon, and Open Cloud in Beijing. And in China, at least the CFP is still open. So if that is interesting to you, please go ahead and submit talks for that.
Great, thank you. Let's see. No community meeting on 3:30 because we decided that we wanted to follow this trend of post conference meeting avoidance, and also no community meeting on 4/6. So, and the caveat there is that if 1/6 is not shipped, then we're gonna keep putting all hands on deck to continue the meeting, and we will be very focused around getting things off the list to get the milestones done. So looks like Caleb Miles asked Leadership Summit invite and details.
I can speak to that, providing I can find the right window. I can speak to that. The Leadership Summit is scheduled for the Friday after CoreOS Fest. It will be in the Samsung office. Jason, you can probably grab the note from probably 3 weeks ago in notices about this.
Got it.
And we are pulling together a list of invites, which will include all of the SIG leaders, and then core company contributors will be giving a budget of people to, we'll be making recommendations of people to invite from those companies, and then a budget of people for the top contributing companies. So that's, I think I have a list of 5 or 8 top contributing companies, and we'll make sure we pull in the people that can help us push forward exactly these things of the governance discussions, the core, what means core discussions, and try to get most of those moved meaningfully forward or concluded in the first week of June.
And so if somebody wants to be a part of that but is not able to actually attend on person, have we made any provisions about how we might do that?
We have not.
Okay.
I will see what I can do about that. We are trying to do this as invite of leadership and keep it much smaller than the Dev Summit last year. So it's also going to depend on who it is that is unable to attend in person. So.
Okay. Yeah, I would just say to have voices missing from the room because of time zones or budgets or conflicts.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Great. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns, or notices from the community? Wow, it looks like we did our job with great efficiency, and we're going to relinquish 20 minutes of your precious time back to you.
To go 1.6 release blocker issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fix some flakes.
Yes.
That is the thing we have to do. Eliminate flakes. Great.
As Brendan described, the meetings will continue until the release ships.
Yes, and then morale will improve. Great. Well, thank you all so very much for attending and sharing your precious time with us. And we'll see you at the next community meeting.
Thanks, Jason, for hosting.
Glad to.